Do you practice NFP? If so, what method has worked well for you guys? NFP as in natural family planning. We have never done NFP. Okay, also, just to clarify, NFP is used either to achieve or avoid pregnancy. There are two sides of it. When we were trying to have our next baby after cash-in, I did do some tracking. I never said I was doing NFP because I do feel like when you say I'm using NFP, people automatically just, like, the connotation is that you're using it to avoid pregnancy.
Right.
So I would never say that I've used NFP to try to get pregnant. I've done some tracking to try to get pregnant. But we've never used NFP because we've never had a grave reason to use NFP, nor do I think we ever really would prefer to use NFP, even if we did.
A lot of people,
this is a big thing.
Yeah, will accept. Meaning, when I say people, I mean your, like, the run-of-the-mill sort of Novus Ordo Catholic, for whatever you want to call it, like modern Catholic, Orthodox even. Not Orthodox, the church, but Orthodox Catholic. They'll say, oh yeah, for grave reason, this or, and you have to discern this or that or the other thing. This, again, is important to remember what grave matter is, okay? And this is where, again, precision in thinking and the ability to make those sorts of distinctions is important. For instance, again, in that clip, we had a friend who said, he's like, oh, all these conditions, have to exist for something to be grave or whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he was confusing grave matter with mortal sin. Mm-hmm. So we have to remember that the gravity of a thing is objective, right? So like for something to be grave, the actual matter has to be in and of itself grave, right? Like, so that's objective. Now, how it applies to you subjectively is different, right? So like, for instance, if we think of a mortal sin, right, there's the three conditions: full knowledge, full consent, grave matter. So can you commit a sin that is of grave matter, but it's not necessarily a mortal sin? Yes, because those other things, that's the subjective aspect of it. That's the subjective aspect of the mortal sin versus the grave matter, right? So like, if you're saying you're making that's a grave accusation, right? What you're saying is that is an accusation that's very serious in its matter, right? But does it mean it's a mortal sin, like sin to do it? No.
Yeah.
So same thing with NFP. What we're getting to is, what you hear a lot is, we're going to discern this. You, me, and God are going to discern if this is a grave reason for us. The issue is that if something is grave matter, is objective. That is an objective reality. Now, how it subjectively applies to you is different. That's the sort of thing that can change person to person, obviously. So, for instance, a common example would be if having another child will negatively affect the current parenting of your existing children. That would be a grave reason. Okay? Now, then subjectively is how you'd have to look at it and say, okay, so what do we mean by that? So like, for instance, let's just say you've had 4 kids in 4 years. And you're in a position where you can barely handle it. You're going nuts or whatever. You can't, you can barely keep your head above water. You're like, I don't want to say mental health, but like you're mental in the sense of like stress, overwhelm. Maybe that's causing you to be short with your kids. You're having difficulty handling it legitimately. Yeah. Okay. Assuming all that. That is an example where you can discern that given this grave matter of that situation, it can be licit in that case, subjectively speaking, for you to say, okay, this is a situation where it would make sense for us to avoid pregnancy. Okay. Now, as far as NFP goes, it has always it's again one of those things where it's like it's always been more of an allowance, right? Like saying like, okay, this is something that if you get in those situations, you can do.
Right.
The optimal thing or what you should do would be to actually abstain. Mm-hmm. Again,
not just during the fertile window, but
correct,
completely.
So this is a perfect example of like when we talked about in our coming to tradition episode where we're like doctrine hasn't changed, but the way things are looked at has changed, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so for instance, it used to be very clear marriage is for the purpose of procreating, educating, and raising children. It's the unity of the spouses and the procreation of children, right? So that change in focus can make it difficult to see why should I have to abstain. Mm-hmm. And of course, again, have to isn't the right way to say it probably, or why, why is that traditionally taught? So like if you go to a lot of traditional priests, when they counsel you, like when somebody's like, I don't feel like I could have another kid, a lot of traditional priests will they'll counsel you to abstain, versus NFP. So the issue, because what they'll say, right? So what the church will say, and again, what's objective is that NFP can very quickly beget a contraceptive outlook or mindset. Mm-hmm. And contraceptive in the sense that you are desiring the pleasure of a thing without the purpose of a thing, right? And again, what makes it convoluted is, again, the ends of marriage be like changing the focus. So in the average Joe, or whatever you want to call it, what ends up happening is people discern things that are not grave into grave. Mm-hmm. And they unknowingly, a lot of times, create a contraceptive mentality for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And they think, since they're doing NFP and they've talked about it to each other, that no matter what, like as long as they're doing NFP, it's fine.
Yeah.
So there are two, I want to be clear, there's two groups. There's one group who will say it's fine no matter what. Mm-hmm. And then there's another group who will say it's not fine no matter what. You don't want to have a contraceptive mentality, but it's between you, God, and your husband, or between your wife and God, as to like what's grave for you. So for instance, people get married and one of them's going to medical school or dental school or whatever, and they say, well, we want to be more financially stable before we have kids. That's an example of where objectively that's not grave. Mm-hmm. Like from an economic perspective, like it would have to be economically destitute, meaning like you literally have the inability to provide for the child,
which is almost never.
Almost, especially in developed countries,
Yeah.
Okay, so just another, like other examples would be, and by the way, disclaimer, I guess you could say, is like no one's talking about your particular situation. And again, just like everything, if something pricks you, inward is mm-hmm. where the eyes should be cast. Mm-hmm. So that would be an example. Or like, oh, we don't want to have kids right away because we want to spend our first year of marriage together, or we want to whatever.
Yep.
We want to get to know each other. We want to, this, that, or the other thing. Not that it's not good to want to get to know each other better, spend more time with each other, etc. But it is not a grave reason to forego pregnancy. And by the way, again, this is the sort of thing that happens when the church, in the way that it's always been taught, it was always taught the end of marriage is primarily the procreation of children, and then it was just changed 70 years ago, and again, we're told that the church had it wrong the whole time. It developed just as the liberals were getting power. Give me a break.
Yeah.
That is the thing about NFP, I guess.
Yeah. I think a really interesting point too is if you're operating off the fact that the reason you cannot get pregnant is truly grave matter, for example, like a health condition, like oh, I have cancer, and if I get pregnant I can't treat the cancer, like that kind of true,
of course.
So my point is, if something is truly so grave that having a baby or getting pregnant and having a baby would be absolutely disastrous and really have horrible effects on something, wouldn't you think that complete abstinence is the correct path anyways? Since, as all of the NFPers say, when you charge them with, well, that, NFP is Catholic birth control, they say, well, there's always the chance you can get pregnant using NFP.
Right.
Okay, so then if you have a really, really grave reason that you cannot get pregnant,
that's good.
You shouldn't be using NFP. You should be abstaining.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good reasoning for sure.
And do you want to add anything to that?
Well, no, I just wanted to say too, though, is another thing is like, again, the marital act is a good and holy thing within marriage. I think, again, this is something that, again, has been only recently developed. Yeah. That this is somehow like the holiest thing that can be done within the marriage, which is just totally and utterly insane. That the marital act is the most, like, so, and just as a perfect example, so King St. Louis IX, when he was canonized, one of the things that they used as evidence of his heroic virtue is that he and his wife only came together when they were trying to conceive. When she was pregnant or post or whatever. And by the way, it does not mean that it's wrong in any sense of the word to do it. It's good, but it's like and things can be good and more good. By the way. Just right. St. Paul even says, it's like, you of course can be married, and it's good to be married, but it's better to not. Right. To
not be married. To like.
Correct.
And by not be married, you mean to become religious.
Right.
Or to
and then those who are married to act as if they're not married.
Yeah.
Again, this is how the church has viewed it. And so my spiritual director it's a perfect example where he says, of course that's better. It's like it's not only ridiculous, but he goes, it's even ridiculous when in these situations people will say, oh, I'm trusting God, because as you said, right, it's like, oh, there's that chance, but like where there's really such a little chance.
If you're using it effectively, then it's a small chance that you still conceive.
Right. But the other thing that he said about it, he goes, like if you're not using it, you actually are trusting God more than if you are. Right. Because it's the same thing as because again, grave reason aside, if the contraceptive mentality is there, it's like you are making those decisions.
Right. If it's 99% effective, then maybe your trust is 1%.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a good point. But it's also, I mean, and again, this is not to say that somebody's holier than another person or whatever for that sort of thing, but to truly leave things in the hands of God for whatever. No, there actually is an element of greater trust.
Yes. And honestly, I feel bad. I really truly do feel bad, especially for women, because it's similar to the whole divorce and annulment thing, where it's like it's the church who's failing and not, making these things so accessible and so easy. It's like the prominence.
You have to do
it's
NFP.
Horrible.
For pre-can, it's like you have to do it.
Right. And not only that, but like the prominence of NFP in people's marriages, I honestly feel bad for them, because the lack of like freedom and the amount of stress that comes along with doing NFP is so, like, I see women all the time in these Catholic Facebook groups who they're looking for advice, they're looking for help, they don't know what to do because, well, first they want to, you know, have 3 years between their babies, or the husband doesn't want, but there's only two days then of open time in the month where they can be together, and the husband struggles with that. And it's like, I was just talking to someone recently who was saying, well, before we could decide to do this, we had to meet with my instructor. And I'm like, so there's like 3 people in this marriage, and like the planning of your family, like that's not
right.
And again, if you do have grave matter and you do decide to use NFP, like you said, it's not sinful and it's licit, and you need an instructor to help you, that's fine.
Yeah.
But lots and lots and lots of couples are going into marriages thinking they have to have a method. They have to be extremely proficient in the method. They have to have an instructor too, because if they have a question, or, you know, it's like, just imagine you don't have any of that.
Yeah.
You can be with your husband when you want to be with your husband. You are with your husband, or you're with each other when you want to be with each other, which is natural. That's how it should be. That's literally how God designed it with the woman's hormones, to want to be together when you're fertile.
Yeah.
And then if there is a grave reason, you abstain completely. For me, that honestly seems like a heck of a lot easier, in terms of you're not worrying about the charts and the signs and the when can we and when can't we. And it's like, I think it would be kind of a beautiful time for the couple to become sanctified together for this reason. So anyways.
Well, it does say that it's good for couples to abstain for a while, you know, to pray and things. Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, so
that's a good opportunity.
Just practically speaking, that's a good argument in terms of that. And then what was I going to say? I forget.
Do you want me to go back to what I was saying, and then you can? I was talking about the freedom in.
Oh, yes, I do
NFP.
remember.
Yeah.
And the other thing, though, is that NFP can also throw off issues of the marital debt. Right, because like a lot of people want to ignore the marital debt, which is again a true thing that's been completely de-emphasized.
Yep.
And it can be odd where it's like we're supposed to be abstaining. Well, the issue is though that if somebody is legitimately, for lack of a better term, like calling in the marital debt, either side, you are not allowed. It is sinful
to deny it.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that's another kind of practical aspect where that can get in the way, because you think you have these, you know, however many days and whatever.
This outside party is telling you that, I just can't fathom like this situation that you're saying here, where one is saying like, yes, what's the right way to word it? Wants to be with his wife, and the wife is saying, our instructor said we can't, like that kind of situation.
And even if you're not using an instructor, even if you're like, well, my chart, I can't. Yeah. You know, it's like, that's not how it works.
Right. But the instructor part just makes it. Yeah. My only point was that's even more wild, because it's like it's a third party person. Yeah. Who has this like say on your marriage.
Yeah. No, it is crazy. And I think, again, what goes back to being crazy is like, first of all, in my mind, I'm thinking it's like, it'll be so funny. The backlash, it depends, right? Because like some people but the backlash that we'll get for this sort of thing, and the church, it's like
we've heard it all.
Yeah, we've heard all, and again, it's like the arguments don't stand up, you know, and it's like, who am I listening to? I'm listening, like, who are they sending me? They're sending people who are like, oh, the theology of the body, and I go down my body saying, oh, I love my lips, I love my nipples, I love my belly. I never showed you that.
You did, but it's I'm
not going to say the person who says it, but it's ridiculous. Like, and these are the people who I'm supposed to believe like know what the church. And again,
it's the picking the one thing that. Sorry, do you want to finish what you were saying?
Yeah, it's just like, I'm sick of being told. And it's like the same sort of gaslighting that happened with COVID. It's like, I can see that what you're saying is different than what it always was.
Yeah. And that's...
Moral principles can't change.
Right.
Can't.
Right.
So...
The way it's presented can change.
Yeah, the ends of marriage can't change.
Yeah.
And by the way, the other thing is like the confluence of events. okay? And this goes with feminism too. When the evil feminists are starting to get a bigger hold on society, that's when the church figures out what what the role of women is really, or when
the church is infiltrated more than ever.
When the country is becoming more sexually free, like in the 60s, not the country, the world really. Mm-hmm. Like when these things are happening and all these changes are happening and like liberalism is rampant within the church, this is when the church really figures out like the true, like develops these things. Like what are we talking about?
Not the thousands of years of tradition.
Yeah, exactly. That's
I love when you get fired up.
Well, I mean, it's so insane on its face. And of course, it's not to blame the individual people. It's just that's why people have the reaction when they find the traditional faith like of all time, which is I've been ripped off. Where was this?
And it can sound crazy and extreme too, like what? I don't want to do that, but it's the same thing, like the freedom in the rules.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, like it actually makes you happier when you practice things the way they're supposed to be.
Right. Well, because it is true that happiness comes from the practice of virtue, right? So when you practice your virtues, you become happier.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just what I was gonna say. It's like it's mind numbing.
Yeah, it's frustrating too when you like people will often will say, but this one person said this one thing in this one letter. Yeah. And it's like, so you think that one thing that you were able to find and pick out negates all of these thousands of years of tradition. That's not
exactly. It has to be interpreted in light of tradition.
Yeah.